There's a rooftop bar in Provenza I used to go to on Thursday nights. Last time I was there, I watched a guy, American, maybe 35, polo shirt, fresh haircut, sitting across from a stunning woman who was laughing at everything he said. And I mean everything. He said something about the weather, and she touched his arm like he'd just quoted Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He was glowing. He thought he'd won the lottery. I knew exactly what was happening at that table, because 8 years ago, I was that guy. Same bar, practically the same table. And what I didn't understand then, what he didn't understand that night, is that the question isn't whether Medellín women will date you. Plenty will. The question is, which Medellín women will date you? Because there are really only 3 types who end up across the table from a foreigner, and they want completely different things. 2 of them will cost you, only 1 of them is what most guys are actually looking for. And here's the part nobody tells you. Which of the 3 you meet has almost nothing to do with luck. It's determined by decisions you make before you ever open your mouth. I'm Luke. I've spent the last 7 years moving between cities in Latin America, and 18 months of that, more than any other city, in Medellín. By the end of this video, you'll be able to identify which of the 3 types you're sitting across from within 1 date, sometimes within 1 conversation. If you're considering doing something similar, or you just want to know what it's actually like, please subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Let me take you back to how I learned this, because I learned it the expensive way. My longest single stretch in Medellín started with a 1-bedroom apartment 2 blocks off Parque Lleras, in Provenza. $1,400 a month, furnished, floor-to-ceiling windows, a rooftop pool I used maybe 4 times. I picked it the way most foreigners pick their first apartment there. I googled best neighborhood Medellín. Every result said El Poblado, and I stopped thinking. That decision, that lazy, defensible, completely normal decision, shaped everything that happened to me for the next 6 months. I just didn't know it yet. Here's what you need to understand about El Poblado, and specifically about Provenza. It is not Medellín. It is a filter. It's maybe 15 square blocks where the rents are triple the city average, the menus are in English, and the density of foreign men is higher than anywhere else in Colombia. And filters work in both directions. You move there to filter Medellín down to something comfortable, but the city is also filtering you. When you plant yourself in Provenza, you are announcing, to everyone, loudly, in a language that requires no translation, exactly what you are, what you probably earn, and how long you've probably been in the country. The women who show up in that 15-block radius on a Friday night know all of this. Most of them are there because of it. My first week there, I did what every new arrival does. I established a perimeter. Gym on Calle 10. Coffee at a place on Via Provenza, where the barista greeted me in English before I'd said a word. Dinner within a 4-block radius. And I remember noticing, without yet understanding, that the economy around me was tuned to a frequency I recognized. Menus with dollar-equivalent prices. Bartenders who asked where I was from as an opener. By day 5, 3 separate strangers, all men, all foreign, had struck up conversations that converged on the same topic within minutes, and the topic was women, delivered with the fevered specificity of guys comparing notes on a market. I should have registered that as data. A neighborhood where the primary export is a fantasy will import everything the fantasy requires, and I was standing in the middle of the supply chain congratulating myself on the coffee. My first month, I didn't leave the bubble once. Why would I? Everything worked. The gym was a 5-minute walk, the coffee was excellent, and the attention, I have to be honest with you about this, the attention was unlike anything I'd experienced in my life. I'm a reasonably fit guy, decent looking on a good day, and in Denver I was invisible. In Provenza, women held eye contact on the street. Matches on the apps came in faster than I could respond. Within 3 weeks, I was going on more dates than I'd been on in the previous 3 years in the States. And I remember calling a buddy back home and saying something I'm embarrassed to repeat now. I said, "Man, the women here just appreciate men more." That was my read. That was my sophisticated analysis of the situation. It took me another 2 months and a woman named Catalina to understand that what I was experiencing wasn't appreciation, it was market activity, and I was the market. So here's the central tension of this whole video, the thing that took me 18 months across multiple stays to fully map out. The dating pool a foreign man encounters in Medellín is not one pool. It's 3 separate pools that barely overlap. and each one operates by completely different rules. Almost every mistake I've made in that city, and almost every disaster I've watched other guys walk into, comes from misreading which pool you're swimming in. Guys apply Pool 2 expectations to a Pool 1 woman and get financially dismantled. Guys apply Pool 1 cynicism to a Pool 2 woman and blow up something real. So let me walk you through all three, in the order I personally encountered them. The first type, and if you stay in the bubble, statistically, the type you will meet first, is what I've come to call the professional. And I want to be careful here, because I'm not talking about sex workers, or at least not only. Prepago culture exists in Medellín, it's visible around Leras at night, and it's a straightforward transaction that I'm not going to spend time on because there's nothing to decode. What I'm talking about is subtler and far more expensive. Women for whom foreign men are, functionally, a line of work, not a job with a price list, a strategy, a pipeline they manage with genuine skill. Catalina was a professional. It took me 7 months and, when I finally sat down and added it up, somewhere north of $9,000 to figure that out. I met her at a cafe on Via Provenza on a Tuesday afternoon, which, notice, already felt organic. Not a nightclub, not an app. She was reading a book. She spoke decent English, but insisted we practice my Spanish, which flattered me. She was 29, told me she worked in marketing, and for the first month, nothing happened that would trip anyone's alarm. She never asked for a peso. That's the part guys don't understand about the top tier of this type. The amateurs ask for money on date 2, and you screen them out easily and feel street smart doing it. The professionals invest first. Catalina cooked for me. She introduced me to her sister. She remembered that my mom's birthday was coming up, and reminded me to call. The extraction started in month 2, and it never once looked like extraction. It looked like life happening to someone I cared about. Her phone screen shattered, and she couldn't afford to fix it until payday. $180. What kind of boyfriend wouldn't? Her mother in Envigado was short on rent because a client stiffed her. $300. Then the marketing job ended, a contract that mysteriously wasn't renewed, and suddenly I was covering her half of things just until she found something, and she was looking. She showed me applications. Then her cousin's medical situation. Then the mother's rent again, now recurring. Every single ask was reasonable in isolation. Every single one came wrapped in visible reluctance and embarrassment. She cried once asking me for money, and I comforted her. I comforted her while she took it. What finally broke the spell was small and stupid. Month 7, her unemployed months, I saw a story on a mutual acquaintance's Instagram. Catalina, at a rooftop in a dress I'd never seen, at a party she never mentioned, tagged with people she'd never introduced me to. Not with another guy, nothing like that. Just a whole life running in parallel that had a budget mine couldn't account for. When I asked about it, calmly, she didn't get defensive. She got cold. And in that coldness I saw, for about 4 seconds, the actual person, a competent operator watching an account close. Within 2 weeks she was gone, and within a month, a friend of a friend spotted her at the same cafe on Via Provenza, reading a book. And Catalina was the artisanal version. The industrial version lives on the apps, and it's worth 60 seconds because most of you will encounter it there first. During my first stay, with my profile pinned to El Poblado, I matched with a woman whose photos were professional grade and whose opening message arrived within a minute of the match. Great English, very forward. Wanted to meet that same night, her suggestion, a specific bar near Lleras I'd never heard of. I went. This was early, I didn't know anything, and the bar was dim, half empty, and the drinks were $40 a round, which is not a Medellín price, it's a we split the tab with the house price. She ordered fast and often. Nothing dangerous happened to me that night, but understand that the same setup runs darker versions, and the mechanism is identical. The app, pinned to the bubble, is not a dating pool. It's a storefront, and your profile, the photos of you at the airport, the bio in English, the location, is you walking through the door with your wallet visible. When I later moved my pin to Laureles and rebuilt my profile in Spanish, the entire texture of the matches changed inside a week. Slower responses, normal photos, women who wanted 3 days of conversation before a coffee, same app, different city. Here's the insight, and write this down if you're taking notes on any of this. The professional is not identifiable by what she asks for. She's identifiable by structure. Her life will contain a locked room. You'll meet a sister, maybe a friend, but never the full circle. Her employment will be real-sounding but unverifiable. Her emergencies will be frequent, plausible, and always slightly beyond her means and just within yours. And critically, she found you in the bubble, or the bubble's digital equivalent, which is a dating app with the pin dropped on El Poblado. That's her fishing ground. That's where the fish are. The second type is the woman most guys claim they're looking for, and the one the bubble makes almost impossible to meet, the regular local. She has a career she'd keep whether you existed or not. She has a dense social world, university friends, cousins, a mother she has lunch with every Sunday, and her default assumption about a foreign man in Medellín, and I need you to hear this, is negative. She's watched 15 years of a certain kind of tourism wash through her city. She knows what Laris is at 1 a.m. If anything, dating a gringo carries a mild social cost for her. Her friends will have questions, and not curious ones. I didn't meet a single woman in this category during my first stay. Not one. The second stretch, I did two things differently, and I'll get into the why later. But the practical facts are, I moved to Laureles, a one-bedroom off La Setenta for $650 a month, less than half my Provenza rent, and I got my Spanish from survival level to actually conversational. Through a Tuesday night language exchange near Segundo Parque, I ended up in a friend group that was maybe 80% Paisa, and through that group I met Manuela, graphic designer, 31, from Envigado, zero interest in foreigners as a category, she'd literally never dated one. Dating Manuela was a different sport played on a different field. It was slower than anything I'd experienced in that city. 3 weeks of coffees and walks before anything you could call a date, because she was, very sensibly, running her own screening process on me. Was I a tourist in a longer costume? Did I have a life, or was I on a 7-year vacation? Her friends interrogated me, friendly, but it was an interrogation, at a bakery in Envigado on a Saturday morning, and I understood I was being evaluated by committee, which is exactly how it works when a woman's real life is at stake. She never asked me for anything. When I once offered to cover her flight for a trip we were planning, she looked at me like I'd insulted her and split it to the peso. It didn't become a long-term thing, timing mostly, and honestly the fact that her life was rooted 6 generations deep in that valley and mine fits in 2 suitcases. But those months taught me what the second pool actually looks like from the inside, and the defining feature is this: total structural transparency. Within a month, I'd met her friends, her sister, seen her office, been to her neighborhood. There were no locked rooms. That's the tell, in both directions. The professional's life is a stage set with sealed exits. The regular local's life is just a life, and you're either being woven into it or you're not. The third type is the one almost nobody talks about honestly, and she's neither a hustler nor a regular local dating for normal reasons. I call her the departure lounge. She is a woman, often educated, often genuinely lovely, frequently from a family that's struggled, who has rationally concluded that her future is not in Colombia, and who is evaluating you, from minute one, as an exit vehicle, not for your money in the Catalina sense, for your passport, your country, and the life she's already built in her head that happens to require a man shaped approximately like you. I went on 4 or 5 dates with a woman in this category, I'll leave her unnamed, that I only decoded afterward. First date, sweet, sharp, great conversation, but the questions had a pattern I didn't clock in real time. Did I own or rent back in the States? What was Denver like for raising kids? How did the fiancé visa process work? Asked casually, as a friend was going through it thing, on date 2. Date 2. By date 4, she was talking about, when you take me to Colorado, the way you'd mention weekend plans. Nothing she did was deceptive, exactly. She was interviewing me for a position, and the position was real, and the benefits package was her entire future. The moment it became clear I wasn't relocating anybody anywhere on that timeline, her interest didn't fade. It switched off, like a light, and she moved to the next interview. I genuinely don't judge her for it. From where she stood, it was the most rational process in the world. But you need to be able to see it, because the departure lounge will happily marry you, and if you're not both signing up for the same arrangement with clear eyes, one of you is going to wake up in year 2 of something neither of you actually chose. So those are the 3. The professional, working you as revenue. The regular local, dating you as a person. The departure lounge, assessing you as a vehicle. Same city, same cafes sometimes. 3 completely different games. Before I get into what guys get wrong here, I want to know, how many of you watching this are seriously thinking about doing something similar? Extended stay, remote work, the whole thing. Drop the city you're thinking about in the comments. I read all of them, and it genuinely shapes what I make next. Alright, the mistakes. I've made most of these personally, and I've watched the rest happen at close range, over and over, to guys who arrive every month convinced they're the exception. Mistake 1, the foundational error underneath all the others, reading attention as attraction. In the States, if a beautiful woman is enthusiastically engaged with you at a bar, that signal means something, because she has no other reason to be there. In Provenza, that same signal is close to meaningless, because for one entire category of woman, generating that signal is the job. The guy I described at the top of this video, the polo shirt guy glowing at the rooftop bar, his entire model of the interaction was built on Denver physics, and he was operating in a place where those physics don't apply. The attention you get in the bubble is real in the sense that it's really happening. What it isn't is information about you. Mistake 2, and this is the one that took $9 grand out of my pocket, believing you can convert type 1 into type 2. This is the Catalina error, and I want to be precise about my own psychology at the time, because it's the same psychology I now watch operate in other men. Around month 4, I saw the signs. I'm not an idiot. The emergencies had a rhythm. The math on her lifestyle didn't work. And I constructed, in real time, a story where I was special, where whatever she may have done with other guys, what we had was different, and my proof was all that early investment, the cooking, the sister, the birthday reminder. It never occurred to me that the early investment was the technique. The professional's entire skill set is making you feel like the exception, because a man who feels like the exception will explain away evidence for months. If part of you is currently doing that math about a woman, if you're watching this video partly to reassure yourself that she's different, I can't tell you she isn't. I can tell you that I would have said exactly the same thing, in month 4, with total sincerity. Mistake 3 is the overcorrection, and in some ways, it's sadder than the first two, getting burned by a professional and concluding that all Medellín women are professionals. Every expat bar in El Poblado has a colony of these guys, 45, 50, 3 years in the city, 0 Spanish, who will corner you over a beer and explain with bitter authority that every woman in Colombia is running a game. And here's what's actually true about that guy. Within his experience, he's right, because he has never once left the 15 blocks where the game is played. His sample is the filter. He's a man standing inside a casino, declaring that all women gamble. The regular locals, the pool 2 women, the Manuelas, are invisible to him, will always be invisible to him, because they are structurally never where he is, and even if one wandered in, his contempt would end the interaction in 90 seconds. Bitterness reads instantly, in any language. Mistake 4, no Spanish, and the delusion that it doesn't matter. Let me be blunt about the mechanics here. If you don't speak Spanish, your entire accessible dating pool in Medellín is the subset of women who speak English. And who invests in English fluency in that city? Educated professionals, pool 2. Some of them, sure. But disproportionately, women whose work involves foreigners. When you can't speak Spanish, you haven't just limited your options. You've inverted your odds. You've filtered specifically toward the pool most likely to be working you, and filtered specifically away from the pool you claim you want. The bitter guy at the expat bar and his 0 Spanish is not a coincidence. It's a mechanism. And mistake 5, quieter than the others, applying gringo pace to pool 2 and blowing it up. Guys who successfully identify a regular local, get a first date, and then run the aggressive escalation timeline that the bubble taught them. Because in the bubble, things move fast, since the professional has no reason to slow walk her own revenue. A regular Paisa woman with a career and a Sunday lunch family operates on a completely different clock, with a screening process of her own, and a guy pushing at week 2 doesn't read as confident to her. He reads as exactly the tourist she assumed he was, and she's gone, politely, and he'll tell his buddies she was probably a scammer anyway. So what does it actually take, not to win at this because it's not a game with a trophy, but to walk through that city seeing clearly and end up across the table from the kind of woman you actually intend to meet? The first thing is geographic, and it's brutally simple. Your address is your strategy. I'm not telling you never to set foot in El Poblado. The neighborhood is beautiful and the coffee really is that good. I'm telling you that where you sleep determines which version of the city is screening you. When I moved to Laureles, the change was almost embarrassing in how immediate it was. Flat streets, a university nearby, locals in the cafes, and my daily life, gym, market, the bakery where the woman behind the counter corrected my Spanish for free, started generating contact with Pool 2 automatically, the way normal life does everywhere on Earth. Envigado works the same way, maybe more so. $650 a month instead of $1,400, and the $750 I saved was somehow the smallest benefit. The second is the language, and I want to give you the actual threshold, because learn Spanish is useless advice. You don't need fluency. You need to be able to hold a 45-minute conversation about real things, her job, your life, why you're actually here, without the wheels coming off. For me, that took about 3 months of genuine effort, an hour a day, a tutor twice a week at $15 an hour, and the non-negotiable rule that I ordered, shopped, and small-talked in Spanish, even when it was humiliating. That threshold is where Pool 2 unlocks. Below it, you're choosing from the English-speaking slice, and I've already told you what that slice is enriched with. The third is structural pattern reading, and this is the tactical core of the whole video, so here it is as plainly as I can put it. When you meet a woman in Medellín, ignore the content of what she says. Content is cheap, and the professionals are better writers than you are readers. Watch structure. Does her life have locked rooms, or does it open as you go? Are you meeting the real circle, friends, family, colleagues, on a natural timeline, or always the same one cousin? Is her employment a thing you could verify without trying, or a fog? Do emergencies arrive on a schedule, always slightly beyond her means and within yours? Does reciprocity exist? Does she reach for the check sometimes, remember your things, spend her own limited resources on you in small ways? Catalina failed every structural test while passing every emotional one. Manuela passed every structural test before I'd thought to check. The departure lounge passes the money tests and fails a different one. Her questions orbit your logistics, visa, hometown, timeline, with a consistency that eventually stops being subtle if you're listening. And on the money question specifically, because someone always asks, I now run a rule I call the first request rule, and it's saved me more than it's cost me. The first time a woman I'm dating asks me for money, any amount, any reason, I don't say yes and I don't say no. I say I need to think about it, and then I watch what happens over the next 48 hours. A regular woman in a genuine bind is embarrassed to have asked it all. She'll often walk it back before you've answered, or solve it another way and tell you so. A professional cannot leave the request open, because an open request is an unclosed sale. So the pressure arrives, gently at first. The emergency escalates. The deadline moves up. A tear appears. The 48 hours costs you nothing and tells you almost everything, and I would have given a lot to know that rule during month 2 with Catalina. When a shattered phone screen opened an account I'd spend 5 more months funding. The fourth thing is the hardest, because it's not a tactic. The men I've watched do well in that city over 18 months, and I mean do well by any definition, including the ones who ended up genuinely partnered, share one trait, and it isn't looks, money, or game. It's that they built an actual life there, a schedule, work they did in the morning, a gym, a routine, a barber, some friendships with local men, which is its own underrated subject. A man with a life is legible to a regular woman as a person, and, this is the part nobody says, he's unattractive to a professional because he's home working at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday instead of out in the fishing grounds, and his eyes have already learned the neighborhood's patterns. The perpetual vacationer, the guy for whom every night is Saturday, is simultaneously invisible to Pool 2 and irresistible to Pool 1. The city sorts him within a month, and he never feels it happening. Let me pull this together. 3 types of women will end up across the table from you in Medellín. The professional, for whom you are revenue and who will be the warmest, most attentive of the 3, because warmth is her craft. The regular local, for whom you are a person and who will be the slowest and most skeptical of the 3, because she has an actual life to protect. And the departure lounge, for whom you are a vehicle and who may be perfectly sincere about the destination while being entirely indifferent to the driver. None of this makes Medellín women anything in particular. I've watched all 3 dynamics run in Denver, just quieter, because the economic gap that powers them is smaller. Medellín doesn't invent these games. It turns the volume up until you can finally hear them. And that's the truth bomb I want to leave you with. The sentence I wish someone had said to me before that first Thursday in Provenza. The type of woman you meet in Medellín is not information about Medellín women. It's information about you, your address, your language, your pace, your legibility as either a person or a mark. The city is a mirror, with the contrast turned all the way up. Guys who hate what they see, blame the mirror. Guys who get it, adjust what's standing in front of it. If you got something from this, hit subscribe. I'm in a different city every few months, and the next videos dig into what daily life actually costs down here, and the mistakes I watched guys make in their first 30 days. See you on the road.